let me tell you that we are looking forward to a very special session, which is going to be conducted by the best legal minds, the legends in this industry. So now we are going to have an address from Mr. Cyril Shroff, Managing Partner, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. And that would be also followed by Mr. Anand Desai and Mr. Amit Desai's addresses to us. So let's begin with Mr. Cyril Shroff. Mr. Cyril, welcome to this gathering, and we're all very much excited to hear you speak to us. The stage is all yours, the audience is all yours.
I wish I could have been there personally, but I've got something here back to back, so I won't be able to make it, but I know it's entirely my loss. So, Akriti has said you speak for about 15-20 minutes, and that this is a audience largely comprising of general counsel. So I was thinking about what would be the most relevant and useful thing to hear about from me in today's deliberations. So I am going to talk about the role of the general counsel in India's Amrit Kal. Because I think all of you must have heard the expression Amrit Kal, which is really the India's journey from 75 to 100, and being predominantly Indian audience, I think this would be perhaps the most relevant. I'll talk about three things. First is India at 7. And then we'll talk about a little bit what implications it has on the legal function and the role of the general counsel, and what are some of the challenges ahead. So, coming to the first topic of India at 75, despite a long history of hundreds of years, thousands of years, India is a young democracy. As a democracy and a republic, we are 75 years old. And that comes with, therefore, a lot of opportunity as well as challenges, because we've not been able to do away with entirely our history. We got a fresh start in 1947, and then we adopted the constitution. But there is a lot of old history that percolates through us. And I think a lot of it is also now, in today's times, a huge positive. So we have survived through almost everything. I travel a lot, and one of the things which has come through in recent times, as the world is going through its doom and gloom moments with the war, with the pandemic, with all the problems in Europe and all of that, that India is the last oasis of hope. It is one of the few, if not the only, bright spot on the planet. And different commentators, whether they are economists or consultants or others, have used different expressions. So more recently, the global head of McKinsey said, it's not just India's decade, but it is India's century. And I am a firm believer in that. And there are many reasons for that. The 4 Ds, as it's called, are probably the one which are driving this growth, which is our demography, our democracy, data and demand. And all these factors are combining into a very positive cocktail of influence for driving India forward. I think it happened at an opportune moment when India at 75 is ready to move into this next phase of its existence. And I don't want it to sound political, because in recent times this expression was used in the budget, not this one but the last one, to describe India's journey. And but I actually see it as a more organic thing in terms of India's growth journey, and we are seeing that live. So India is headed on its way to become a global powerhouse. And what does this mean? I think it means a very strong both public and a private sector in India. It means a much stronger India Inc. It means the rise of the Indian multinational. The new ODI rules, for example, are essentially premised on the fact that India is ready to be producing a lot of multinationals of their own headquartered in India or controlled from India, but having businesses all over the world. The self-confidence of the country is going up. We are a global influencer both on geopolitical matters as well as business. Increasingly, we are becoming rule makers, not rule takers. We will shortly take over the presidency of the G20, and I think that will also give us an opportunity to influence a lot of global issues. Geopolitics is working in our favor. So, whilst the biggest geopolitical issue at the moment is, of course, the US-China divide, and of course, Russia is kind of a side issue. That the real issue is US-China. But what it's meaning for a lot of global multinationals is they are pursuing what's called the China plus three strategy, and India is one of those three. So, India, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and that's going to result in a lot of opportunities for us. Another big theme that is playing out is the ESG transition or the energy transition, where in a race to save the planet, corporations and businesses all over the world are trying to reduce their carbon emissions and coming in line with what are the standards of the day. And that's a huge opportunity for India, not only to take leadership, but also in terms of just capital investment and business. We've set ourselves as a nation the target of becoming a 50 trillion economy by 2047, and 2047 is not that far off. And it's not going to happen in one bright moment in 2046. It's going to be a continuous journey from now on. So I just want to first place this context that what is the opportunity for all of us in the context of which we look at the legal function. So as a result of this, what are the changes that we see in the legal landscape? A lot of things have been evolving. The first one, which I think is more philosophical in my view, is the fact that we are moving to a more rule-based system from a relationship. So a large part of our post-independence policy making was very relationship-based. Who did you know in Delhi? There was so much discretion that had to be exercised, and therefore relationships matter. But increasingly, as we are moving forward, and in today's time, what is more important is are you in compliance with the rules or not? Regulators are asking, show me the data. Show us, how does this actually sort of sit in. So this big change from relationship to rule-based is a sign of our times. Consequently, as a result of that, also the state is becoming harder and becoming harsher as well. Every day you read of some ED raid or CBI raid or something or the other of the economic offences, and the state coming down hard on things. It is nothing but an expression of the fact that there is much more public accountability, and the fact that the state has moved from a relationship. It's not one of those things where phone call can solve it. Those days are coming to an end. Another broader change is also the role of technology. There are lots of new tools that are available. Can you think of even a conference like this, me sitting on my desk in office and zooming in and talking? So all of this is becoming possible, and this is changing by the day. This is going to have big implications in terms of the workforce as well, but I'll come to that. There are lots of new laws and areas of work. So whilst the Data Protection Act was withdrawn, but a new one will come soon. And a lot of new developments in terms of new laws which are coming in the technology space, and they are going to have a profound impact. It will mean new areas of work and new practices, and also new skills, because lawyers will have to be both in-house as well as external, will have to be familiar not only with these new frameworks, but will also have to be kind of data fluent or technology fluent, and also be able to kind of interpret all of this. Just a more liberal arts type of approach towards the law will have to be supplemented extensively by more STEM and science related skill sets as well. This will manifest itself in not only technology areas, but also areas of which are the topic of the day. For example, ESG compliance, energy transition, A lot of it is very scientific stuff. So, what are the implications of this for legal departments and law firms? Going forward, as we see in the next, 2.5 decades, but I think a lot of these changes are already happening and will get accelerated. Is firstly, in-house legal departments will become larger, and only 50% of them will be lawyers. You will find that legal departments will increasingly have technologists, scientists, public policy advisors, communication specialists, and things like that. So that I think is going to be one now, and some of these changes will reflect even on the external side. There will be a big role of technology both inside and outside. Law firms, I think, will become multidisciplinary as well. For example, in our own firm, we just recently hired a head of ESG who is not a lawyer. He comes from a science and physics background, but I think his, his skills are extremely necessary for what we are trying to do. I think there will be new labor models. One is because of technology and the art of the possible, for example, things like this. But I think the professional world, whether in-house or external, will have a big element of the gig economy as well. Just as you have ERM and CRM systems, I think one rise I see is of what's called the CLM system, which is the contract life management, which will therefore become the single source of truth for everything to do with the internal data of contracts and businesses, as opposed to it lying in 100 inboxes. So that will kind of redefine a lot of the aspects of the internal legal function. Relationships will also become very important. The new legal function, I think, will be defined by the kind of relationships that legal departments have with not only external firms, but also policy setups, NGOs, and of course the state. A few other broader themes in terms of the evolving role of the General Counsel. I think there will be this constant tussle on what is more important, the generalist or the specialist. So on the one hand, I think there will always be a market for deep specialization, but I think there is equally a big market for broader generalists as well, who can see the whole picture and can connect the dots. This will see the rise both internally and externally of what I call the delta-shaped lawyer, who has it's like a triangle. One end of the triangle is legal skill, that's our traditional model. The other would be fluency with technology, and the third will be with processes. I think as GCs, that apart from the technology part, and even processes are becoming far more important. Processes for appointment of counsel, processes for appointment of for payment of their fees, processes for review of the legal work, correcting drafts, all of that. So there will be these three legs: technical legal skills, people and processes, and technology. As a practical matter, I think we will start seeing more changes in the appreciation of the difference between advice and opinions. Opinions, which are very often sought by the counsel, tend to be more elaborate, very caveated documents, whereas advice, which is more valuable, sometimes can be advice even on a phone call or on a WhatsApp or separate matter that these are very risky models. But what I think will get valued more as we go along is advice rather than your opinions. Because opinions will always come with this is a legal position except for 3-4 facts. I think we will see the emergence in the broader profession of more specializations as well. So one of the things which I think that have been happening in the last 25-30 years in the legal profession is what I would like to call the industrialization of law. The rise of big law firms like ours and others, or the rise of large legal departments such as the ones that all of you are in, is what I call the broader direction of industrialization of the law. So we are in the midst or at some kind of evolved state of the industrialization of the legal profession, and that is what is happening. Which is why you have things like new systems, not only on technology but procurement and RFPs and all of that. These are symbols of the profession having reached a level which is kind of assuming industry growth. Consequently, I also see the long-term decline of the hourly rate model, which many of us believe is the scourge of a lot of, because the incentives are completely misaligned on that one. The more hours you build, the more fees get approved. And it will move away from that, I think, to a more value-based. So I think buyers of services will start valuing and paying for the value of service rather than the inputs or the costs in terms of number of hours. So sooner or later, that model will die. What are some of the other trends that I see? I see in terms of, and this is beyond just legal departments, I think I see it as a trend across different businesses of a new normal on work. I think the pandemic has disrupted the erstwhile office-centric model. And while the office is not going away anywhere, I am sitting in my office just now and having this talk. And there are a number of people down the corridor who are doing their work on their desktop. So I think while the office will remain, I think hybrid is the reality where there will always be a part of the workforce which is going to be working remotely, whether from their home in the same city or even otherwise. And this has profound implications on the culture of organizations, the risks that are involved, and this work culture in general. So this, I think, is a big trend for all businesses, all employment, but I think in a service business like legal, I think is going to play out differently. I also think that legal tech will become mainstream. Just now it is a bit of a toy on the side for in many businesses, but I think legal tech is now getting to scalable proportions. We are seeing now the entry of Gen Z mainstream in the workforce. In our firm now, the majority of folks are millennial or Gen Z, and that come with completely different dynamics in terms of expectation, the relationship with work, the relationship with their organization. This coincides with what is globally evolving with the kind of death, what's called the death of the company man. The company man was a concept in Japan where you join the job and you retire from that job 50 years later. But increasingly across the world, including in Japan, this is no longer true. There are fewer and fewer people who are company men, and people change jobs like 5-6 times in their career. And I think all of us are witnessing that, which therefore makes the entire work and work-related relationships inter se as well as with the organization a bit more transactional. Mental health will continue to be an issue, partly because of the stress of just having the amount and complexity of work that has gone up, and the demands of the workplace, but also the intrusion of technology. I think one downside of technology is that it has erased the distinctions between sort of work and private space. We saw that in work home, it would be a physical set of paper which be taken in a bag. Now you don't have to do any of that. Just take your laptop or you take your iPad. The other emerging theme, I think, in terms of the workforce is the purpose of the role of purpose culture. Amit, you're on. Just mute your mic. I'm just finishing. So purpose and culture will be a big factor of employing people, and even as we take our workforce, we get asked questions on what are you doing on CSR, what are you doing on pro bono, what does your organization stand for, and things like that. It's not just the paycheck. Lastly, I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is becoming a big theme in all organizations, including legal. And it goes beyond gender diversity. I think it covers race, neurodiversity, variety of skills, all of that. I read 2 days ago on one of the global law firms actually hiring people with autism because they bring a different kind of neurodiversity to the workforce as well. So DEI, I think, will continue to play out as one of the biggest themes of our time. and the most successful organizations will be those ones who kind of embrace this in their their relationship with their employees. So I'll stop here. I know that Amit and Anand have joined. I don't know what the format is, whether you want me to take any Q&A now or later. But I hope that this was helpful to you in terms of how I see the Indian opportunity evolving and how the role of GCs and correspondingly of external counsel is also going to change. So thank you again, Akriti and Vigalila.
Welcome to the forum. Good afternoon.
Well, Legalira and Akriti, thank you once again for inviting me to your program. It's always thought inspiring. I'm going to talk about something that I specialize in, which is what is known as the white collar legal practice, both criminal and regulatory. Both these practices have caught the imagination of law firms over the last 10 to 15 years. And this has been driven by the accelerated actions against the corporate and business organizations over the last 2 decades, when large commercial transactions were boldly brought under the scanner of investigating agencies. This scanner placed many legal structures and advice under intense scrutiny of regulators and agencies. Many of you here today must have experienced and introspected about this. The arguments of investigators and authorities on the form over substance interpretations, the letter of the law over the spirit of the law interpretations, the strict construct of the provisions of law over the underlying purpose or object of the law interpretations. And some of this very briefly was touched upon by Cyril in his comments a few minutes ago. The rules of the game are changing. The jurisprudential principles which have historically governed the rule of law are changing. The rules of interpretation are changing. The human mind was always creative, and greater the knowledge, greater the creativity. And this applies not only to scientific or medical or space-related advancements, but it also extends to the means of creating wealth. And when this applies to creating wealth, we must remember the unspoken epitaph of the fortune makers. Balzac, a French writer in the mid-19th century, said, "The secret of a crime that has never been found out, for which a great fortune was created, was because it was properly executed." This epitaph in the mid-21st century would read, "The secret of a great fortune is a regulatory crime which was never found out because it was executed with great advice and execution." In this digital and virtual century, a century of the Orwellian surveillance, where every human being's identity will be digitalized in government servers and every conversation or activity is being captured through the microphones and cameras which we have in our daily use devices. It is not the color of one's color which will determine the criminals of the fortunes. The term white collar has lost its relevance considering the growth of the fashion industry, the advancement in collarless shirts, the casual dress codes in tech companies, and the post-pandemic world of work from home. The economic crimes of this century are dominated by technology. The crimes of the physical world are transcending into the crimes in the virtual world with the intermediary step of the digital world. Most economic crimes now have a prefix cyber or virtual. The crime of kidnapping for ransom is now kidnapping of your critical data for ransomware. The crime of robbery for goods is now theft of data or information. The offense of copyright infringement has moved from the real world to the virtual world. the crime of extortion has become cyber extortion, and currency frauds are moving into cryptocurrency frauds. But the biggest challenges are cyber terrorism and cyber effects on the financial system of a country. I don't know if you remember the attack on the central bank of Bangladesh some years ago. In this seemingly limitless growth of the internet, and now that we are experimenting with the metaverse, today's crimes have the advantage of anonymity, the ability to mask the offender behind machines and ones create huge challenges for the prevention, investigation, and prosecution of these crimes. You and your next generations will be functioning on both sides of the spectrum. In this context, rules of enforcement, rules of evidence, and rules of interpretation are some of the biggest challenges that the system faces. Since investigations are substantially related to data analysis, the rules of enforcement need to be calibrated. The most complex issue in this context is the issue of privacy rights. Fortunately, the Supreme Court in Puttaswamy has established the right to privacy as a fundamental right, reversing the earlier view. However, the challenge is in its encroachment during investigations. Breach of legal privilege, breach of confidentiality, violation of Article 20 rights, civil liberties, breach of personal informational privacy rights are some of the biggest concerns. Agencies have a tendency to seize servers and hard drives which contain data well beyond the relevance of the ongoing investigations. How do we technically and legally ensure that only relevant data is seized and they do not have access to the rest? Who decides the issue of relevancy? How are the rights of the state and citizens balanced in this battle over privacy? In the context of the rules of evidence, the challenge of proof are significant. The doctrine of hearsay and the best evidence rule clash. Data stored on a machine is mostly hearsay. Special rules like Section 65B of our Evidence Act seek to overcome the problem of admissibility. But this too has many procedural and technical difficulties. The ability to tamper, alter, morph, mask, and fabricate, and create duplicates without wearing a trace or give rise to the challenges of appreciation of evidence. When security measures like passwords, biometrics, and facial recognitions are all up for hacking, the integrity of the data as evidence in a court bears serious consideration. The third area of change are the rules of interpretation. Over the last decade or more, the doctrine of purposive interpretation has found more use and play in judgments of courts. This doctrine is often used to overcome the traditional doctrines of strict construction, the mischief rule, the rule of plain meaning, the rule of construction of penal statutes, and the like. The challenges will keep increasing, more so since courts are now in the palms of the people, given that live streaming has begun. Now that the courts of law and the courts of people are merging, social media is rife with views of the people on the process of the law and the process of judging. This people power tends to influence decisions in the judiciary, and interpretations of the judiciary tend to lean in this direction based upon public opinion and public perceptions. The challenges are significant. The answers are still out there, and I'm going to leave it for you people to determine and judge and provoke your minds yourselves into thinking as to what could be the answers. The answers are not straightforward. And since Manvendra Mishra, the white collar expert, I can't see him, so I don't know what is the color of his collar, is following this talk with a discussion called Trick or Treat, I will leave it to him and his vampires, ghosts, and skeletons to produce a trick or a treat on these thought-provoking matters when the investigators come knocking on your doors. Thank you very much. And thank you, Akriti and Legal Era, once again for inviting me to this thought-provoking sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. you so much to both Cyril sir and Mr. Amit Desai for such insightful and such amazing conversations. It was like a masterclass on what's latest and what's happening and where to look forward to. And with that, may I now invite another legend from the industry, Mr. Anand Desai, Managing Partner, DSK Legal. A huge round of applause and a grand welcome to you here, sir.
Thank you, Akriti, Legal Era, all of you here. It's a tough act to follow Cyril and Amit, but I will try and develop a bit more on some of what they touched upon. I have not prepared a speech, and I would love to interact with whoever has questions or comments. What I wanted to talk about today was what many of you may have faced and may face, which is a crisis situation. What I mean by a crisis situation is a simple thing like your data being blocked and a demand for ransom in cryptocurrency being raised. And I had someone phoning me a couple of months ago saying that they went to the local branch of their bank when they faced such a situation, a listed company. And the branch said, sorry, you cannot deal in cryptocurrency through us. So they did not quite know what to do. So they turned up at lawyer A, lawyer B, and lawyer C's doorstep to say, what do we do? And as most of you know, it's a gray area whether you can buy cryptocurrency officially through a bank, whether you can pay what is possibly in any country an illegal act of kidnapping data, if I may call it that, extorting money by virtue of having taken charge of your server. Different situation. Somebody actually physically takes control of your servers or takes them physically out of your premises or control. I don't know of any company today that can function. I'm not sure how many have got really strong backups, up to date, literally up to date, as in up to the last second. Most don't. Which means business comes to a potential standstill temporarily. There's a huge risk of clients getting upset depending on your business. A risk of payments not being made in time if your payment system has been also taken over, etc. Another situation. There is an enforcement agency turning up at your doorstep or summoning you, which happens, as we know. It's picked up by the media. It's picked up by social media. It is spread like wildfire. Your creditors get nervous. Your funders get nervous. Your suppliers get nervous. Is it a legal issue? Is question one. And I know a lot of people look at me and say, no, it's a PR issue. It's a management issue. It's a promoter issue. There's nothing in court. Till there's something in court or a contract to be drafted, it's not my problem. I think a logical question would be in these situations, can you expect an FIR to be registered? What can you do once it is registered, if you can get it registered? If no action is taken, is there a civil remedy available? If what is called a campaign or a social media campaign called multiple things today, trolling, etc., etc. But whole campaign is started against your organization or promoter or a director or a critical person in the equation. As you know, it can be spread like wildfire. It can be picked up by the press who may publish it thinking there's some merit in it. They want to be first in publication. Breaking news, as we all know. My own experience to share with you after having raised some of these is number one, it is a legal issue. Sad to say or good to say. Secondly, it's also a PR issue. Thirdly, it could also be a forensics or a technology issue. It's a combination. I don't think any one of us in any of the three branches which I described can handle it on our own. So a recommendation I make to clients sometimes and to law firms, by the way, more and more is please develop an adequate network of people who can help you or you can help them on a forensic side. Try and deepen relationships with the law enforcement agencies to the extent it's possible. It's not easy, but to the extent you can gain some confidence and credibility with them or somebody over there, it's great. Just to have the ability to seek an audience with a senior officer sometimes helps. It's practical. They may believe you, they may not believe you. Many years ago, I was talking to a senior police officer, and he had an interesting comment, which I have kept in mind. He said, how many of our citizens want to interact with law enforcement agencies just on a social basis? And the answer is probably near zero, right? So what they see of us is only when we have a problem. They never see us unless we have a problem. They have no idea whether we are credible, whether we are suspect when you land up at their doorstep. They've heard of companies, they've heard of individuals, but they have no idea whether to believe what you say to be true or to believe that whatever you say is whitewashed, color washed, etc. But in my experience, unless you have the ability to talk on a very frequent basis, and when I say very frequent, it's up to you. I'm not saying every morning and every evening, but to keep in touch with who counts in our lives. And all these people count. And they will count if they have not counted yet, I can assure you. As we know, the legal system has its own delays, its own issues in terms of throwing up concerns that may or may not be easily answered. We are seeing what is called huge scams being raised today in terms of the press. By the time the matter goes to a judge, reputation is gone, pretty much. And when you get a relief by bail, etc., no one reads that. That comes in tiny print at the corner. And meanwhile, the newspapers and magazines are full of how terrible this person is and how this company is full of all kinds of crooked acts. Another aspect I want to touch upon, which again may be relevant to many of you, is the role of independent directors and your advice to independent directors as GCs and as practitioners. Today, the reality is it's not easy to get truly independent directors to join a board. I'm sure all of you have faced that. When they're there, they are concerned as to how much information is being given to them and how much is not. When a problem occurs, they have no idea how to deal with it. And some of them have their own travel restricted for no fault of theirs. We've seen this. Some have bank accounts frozen for no fault of theirs. Because they may not genuinely. Now, whether they were negligent is another discussion people can get into. But the reality is, many independent directors are not aware of day-to-day functioning, day-to-day issues that go on in a company. So I thought I'll just touch upon some of these, and again, happy to get into a discussion. But I genuinely believe that unless each of us has some plan to address a crisis situation, we may be found lacking down the line. And I repeat, the crisis is not to be addressed by us alone. No GC on his own can address it, to my mind. No law firm or lawyer can address it on their own. It has to be a combination of people, and the right people brought in very swiftly, preserving data. I'll leave a last thought with you. And I know a lot of us are not savvy in technology, but the whole basis of preserving electronic data as evidence is a story unto itself. And I see 65B certificates, which Amit touched upon. They have no meaning to my mind, by and large. People just write down, it's my computer, I send the email, or I save the file over here, full stop, and now believe it. And as of today at least, it's not required for that person to be a witness. So it's not possible to cross-examine them necessarily, unless they present themselves. It's a certificate, as you know. It's not an affidavit, it may not be on oath, etc. So again, just some thoughts to leave with you to widen your scope of activity. I think it was said by my colleagues earlier, the times are changing, the roles are changing, and we need to equip ourselves much, much more than we have done as we grew up. And the next generation, I feel, exciting times are ahead of them. But I'm not sure how many law colleges or courses teach any of these things. And I think somewhere they need to start addressing not just the statutes and not just judgments, but real life and how to deal with real life situations as effectively as they can. So thank you. Again, I'm not sure about questions. Although no time for questions. Okay.
Any questions?
I can ask. No, sir, I mean, this is to just build on the reputation part, right? And I represent a crypto company and that industry is also facing some sort of headwinds of aggression. And we were also the victim of the same thing, right? So, you could build the business in all the bona fide way, and you can over comply. You can even think of complying the law with the right spirit, if not only with the letter. But still, some sort of enforcement agency will always be curious to understand any new technology, any new business. And it is, but natural for them to really exercise the legal right to, come to your office and interview you, ask the data and all, which I also believe is the right thing for the government to do, right? Because unless and until they understand the finer nuances of a disruptive industry, they cannot build the law. Now, this exercise by industry, and I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of everybody, is very much welcome. Now, just curious to know that does Enforcement Directorate or any kind of income tax department enforcement, do they even have the right to publicize these activities on their Twitter handle? Because, these days everybody follow the Twitter handle of Enforcement Directorate, CBI, income tax and all. Is it right, I mean, legally and also ethically to really say that, I raided so-and-so company and, I went, okay, you come and raid, but by saying that I raided, okay, publicly, you are exposing something which is very confidential. So is this right legally? Is it right, say morally? And what can be done to stop this practice?
Okay, so first of all, it's a very good point, and I was trying to touch upon that earlier, that today news spreads. We know of newspapers, online sites that are waiting to get information from courts, etc. I would extend that even to the sub-registrar. We are now reading about who has bought which flat at what value, which is not a nice thing. I mean, to let that out. It is, but it's not like if the whole world is going to go and inspect it. Okay, someone's going to inspect it. No, I'm coming to your point. Yeah, I'm saying it's an extension of that. Ultimately, private information of any sort being put out affects the right to privacy, which is known. And there's plenty of case law, as we know, to say that a public figure, people have a right to know more than a private figure, etc. In my mind, what you're saying is absolutely right. No agency officer has a right to give information out. It's a fact. It's been brought out multiple times in various forums. But my own belief is unless it's a government action and a government diktat and it's taken seriously, it may not stop. Because there's an element of fame people like to be part of. There are other reasons why they give information which we know about. But you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what I was saying, that a person's reputation can be completely demolished even before they have a right to go to court, seek redress against the agency. And you're also right that a lot of the inquiry is only an inquiry. It is not a conviction. But the way it comes out is, ED's called you, CBI has called you, there must be something. And that must be something can spread. And like I said, spreads nervousness among so many people. But, another factor, looking back, I think NASSCOM was a great opportunity for the tech industry to come together. It was nascent in terms of what is possible today. But because they were together, they could actually present themselves to the then IT minister, etc., and explain what they were doing. And I'm not sure how much of that happens now. And I know it's not easy, because when you go to explain technically, your secrets are out there. Your technology may have to be put out there. But I genuinely believe unless there's more and more interaction, it's just going to be chaotic. And you're right, they don't know what you're doing. So multi-level marketing systems, for example, was not fully understood. So anyone doing something like that was in trouble. Payment gateways today, we've seen that, because they don't really understand how does it work. Is there a backup? Is there no backup? some of the tech companies' valuations today. No one has a clue what's the basis of this valuation, except someone apparently is willing to put in money at that value. There was that great NFT scam where a guy presents a online digital art piece, sells it at X. It is sold onwards at 10x. It is sold onwards at 100x and 1000x, I think, in a fairly short time, 6 months, if I remember right. So suddenly the whole world thinks you can make lots of money on NFTs. Now, is that a fraud? Question mark. But it's a fact that it happened. It's a fact that people got excited. It's a fact people signed on celebrities, etc., and offered large amounts of money, believing that to be the future. So it's a balance. But again, to answer your question, yes, you have a right to privacy in this country, in law. Enforcing the right is issue number 2. And if you do interact with government, I genuinely believe today there is a government at the center and many states, if not all, where they want business to come in. They want the revenue. They want the taxes. So if they can help, I believe they will. So long answer, but hopefully it helped. Yeah.
So my thoughts are from the opening words you said about what happens in a company when something wrong happens. So fortunately for me and unfortunately for certain companies, I was in 2-3 situations where such thing happened. Once was a time when a Korean multinational company collapsed abroad and effects happened in India. Second was I was a company which was in 2G scam. And third, because of a business competition, some raids happened in office. So while of majority of people in the room will be a GC or in-house people, I think I want from your side is an advice that what are the 4-5 steps or some thought process should be done by in-house team to prepare themselves for something so that they can ring fence that. I think it could not be a reaction, but proactively what can be thought as steps. Thanks.
So I think one is, if it's to do with your technology system, understand how it works and try and freeze it when it happens. Because if it's related to that, any change from that is going to be a problem for you, a serious problem. And I know it's not easy to freeze it, but it's not difficult to make a full backup. Believe me, it's not. The CIO or CTO may tell you, oh, why, etc. It's not. And I know many efficient companies do it every hour or every 2 hours or every day at least. And that's a good backup to keep for all data, number 1. Number 2, as I said earlier, if PR is going to be part of it, work with the PR. Because today I've dealt with PR agencies in crisis situations. They don't know because they've not done it. They don't know the legal implications. They don't know the forensics implications. So they'll put a sweet message out about, how nice we are, which is great. But when 10 people are saying that there's an ED raid, just saying how nice I am may not take us very far. So, keep scripts ready as soon as you can when a problem occurs. That has to be with the senior management. You can't have a script on your own. But if you can do it with senior management, bring in independent directors if you want. Another thing I've seen quite effectively done is immediately try to have a separate committee of independent directors. The chance of their looking at things objectively is far higher in many situations than the promoter or the actual management who promptly go into a defensive mode. I've done nothing. Why is this happening to me, etc. And that is where I think independent directors can make a big difference in terms of bringing some sanity, objectivity to the table. The last part I would say is work as a team. The worst thing is people shooting off in different directions, doing different things, putting out different messages. We've got multiple situations where I think there's been a clear plan as to what to say internally, extremely important because people are going to start wondering what the hell is going on internally. Second is externally, how best to do it. And often it's best to keep quiet, very often. It works to advantage because you're not endorsing something, you're not attracting a reaction, which you tend to do by making a statement. So hopefully those are 3 or 4 things that start the process, but ultimately it's quick action. And I've actually had situations of having to phone newspaper reporters. You cannot phone social media players. And telling the guy, look, listen at least to what we have to say before publishing an article and maligning the client. And it works because they're also worried. They don't want to just write something that could get a lawsuit against them. Yeah. Thank you so much.